welcome to Now That's Debatable. This is your host, Fantastic Facade. I'd like to welcome you. Geo, are you with me? He went to water a plant, but I'm not sure if he's back yet. I'm echoing a little bit because I'm listening.
I am.
I'm back now.
You can't hear me?
Okay.
You can't hear me?
I can hear you. I just wanted to make sure I could hear you in the podcast. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Now that that is out of the way, let's go ahead and dive right in, shall we? Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us. If you're here now or if you join in, please feel free to say hello in chat. We'd love to see you there. We'd love to have you commenting on this one. This is going to be a pretty interesting one and something that's going to probably impact more people that come across this than people may realize, because we're going to be talking about artificial intelligence. And there's a lot of ways this can go, and there's a lot of things that we could talk about, and we only have about an hour to do it. But if you call in and you have something specific you want to talk about, please do so in the chat or give us a call. That number is 202-888-5350. It's flashing in the upper right-hand side of the screen there. Feel free to call that. We are monitoring it right now. And we'd love to have you, or please say hello in chat if you're joining us. It should pop up on the screen just like mine did from my gaming channel Twitch, where it says say hello in chat. Please do so like that. You can give us a question or give us a topic that you would like to talk about specifically. Even if it's not about AI, we'd love to hear from you. Our whole tagline is let your voice be heard. So, with that in mind, we're going to be taking on artificial intelligence. Geo, you and I, we kind of came across this together. We talk about stuff like this all the time anyway. And we've kind of discussed some of these contested points in person and over the phone. And a bit of an echo. Let's try to adjust that. I know the echo was there. Thank you. Call me. I know the echo was there definitely at the beginning. If it's still going on, we're going to try to make some adjustments accordingly. Let's see. Let's bring this down a little bit. Hopefully that clears up the echo.
If you listen to the stream, tell me if you still hear echo. It's just a fart.
Call me HT3.
MJ.
First time chat. Well, I appreciate it. Hopefully we've cleared up that echo. I turned the sound down a little bit so it's not echoing. And I had my computer up to see if I could hear myself in the chat. Vum today from Con French and YouTube. Not sure what that means, but hello.
You hear the echo?
Yeah, they still hear the echo.
Let's see if we can fix that somehow. Let's go to this. Let's try this. Is it? Let's see if it's any better. See if we can hear it now.
Echo. Testing.
You hear the echo?
Yeah, it's echoing
This is
really
so
bad on
ghetto.
my mic. Let's try me again. Let's see. Is it any better now? bear with us. Sorry, I know there's an echo. It's really bad when I talk. It's not so bad when Geo talks, but I'm trying to correct it. Let's see if that fixes it, hopefully. There we go. It sounded a little better on my side. Hopefully that corrects it on your side. It should be cleared up. If not, please let me know. I appreciate you guys commenting and letting us know. Geo, can you still hear me? Now you're talking and I can't hear you at all. That's exciting. Hang on. Gio, are you still talking? It looks like I can hear you, but it's not. Why are these muted? Don't mute. I apologize for the delay, guys. Gio, if you're talking, I can't hear you. I apologize. I am trying to get this all sorted out. I couldn't hear Geo at all, but I know I can hear me now back in this. Just trying to figure that out. If we can't get it solved today, we may have to try this again tomorrow. But I do apologize in advance. We had all this working until the old sound issue there. Gio is probably going to have an issue. I accidentally kicked him from the whole server. Didn't mean to do that, but he should be able to join the live stream call now, so. And I see him talking. I just don't hear him at all. I appreciate your patience. Sorry about this, guys.
All right.
Testing 1 2 3. Testing.
Testing.
Testing. All right, can you hear me on Discord?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Hang out.
All right.
Okay, sorry about that, guys. I do apologize. It took up quite a bit of time, but I think we have it all sorted out now, and I don't hear too much of an echo. If it's still echoing, we apologize. We'll make some more adjustments before next week's show, which I highly recommend that you guys watch. It is going to be definitely one that sets us apart.
Yes.
Don't want to get too much into it. Don't want to spoil the fun, but I can say that next week's show will be undoubtedly one of the most controversial shows that we've taken on, and we have to do some research. Sounding better, thank you, Call Me. We really appreciate that. So thank you for watching and sticking it out with us. Apologize for that audio issues. Gio, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into one of these topics. Pick one and
Perfect.
we'll go in.
Let's talk about job creation, jobs creating, losing, replacing economics. And I think it's a good one to start because one, I think it's the least interesting of the ones we have up here. So let's go ahead and tackle that one.
We can go ahead
And for one, I mean, like you'll always hear the complaint that AI jobs are that the AI is taking over jobs, and that's true. But it's not reducing the amount of jobs in the aggregate. Not in my opinion. And that's not what the research shows as well. It's destroying certain type of jobs. It's destroying a lot of your manual labor, lower wage type of jobs, and it's creating jobs and more of your IT, your coding, and high salary type of jobs. And I think that's a good thing. That's gonna overall, it's gonna raise the standard of living for a lot of people. Do you remember when we were back in Central Virginia? Go ahead.
I was going to say, basically, I was just going to contribute that essentially the big concern is obviously that AI is actually destroying more jobs than it creates.
Yeah, and so how about this? This was one of the main concerns that people had in the 80s with ATMs. They thought it was going to replace bank tellers, and is that what it did? When's the last time you walked into a bank? Was there a lack of bank tellers?
Not entirely, but I mean, yeah, they have definitely cut down the need for the more bank tellers, if you will.
Well, it changed the job. Like it got more specialized. So
yeah, but
it changed. It changed the job.
Things like a factory in which things are like mass produced,
like ATM machines. Right. So this is what I'm talking about. Like,
well, I mean, no. No. I mean more like. Consider like automation has even though it's not specifically AI has replaced a lot of hand jobs. They've replaced the whole point of that.
Yeah, and that's what I'd argue is a good thing. I mean, where it gets really problematic is when we bring up people who may not be fitted or like more of your more technical, more intellectually challenging jobs, and I can see the concern for that. So like your jobs where you're just just stacking up groceries or something like that. That like I remember like right before I was leaving Central Virginia.
Obviously, and then like they're so there are obvious jobs in which there's a really high percentage of likelihood that your job's going to be replaced by something like AI, and then there's jobs that are considered extremely unlikely to be replaced by AI. Those being things like psychologists and nurses.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like maybe not everyone has the ability to be a psychologist or a nurse or be a software engineer. But I don't think. Uh, sorry, I guys got distracted by something. But I don't think that in the aggregate, in my sector, like I work in cybersecurity, and I was reading this article, and it talked about 580,000 unfilled cybersecurity roles just in the United States alone. So it's just a matter of having the technical expertise to be able to get those jobs. So, and that's not suitable for everyone. I mean,
Right,
there
but
are
that
people
doesn't
who,
take away the fact that it's. Sorry, I'm having a little
who went
my
out. I
issue is
couldn't hear
I'm
you.
listening to you on the stream, so we're a little off on audio. I don't know why it's not been coming through my headphones, but I don't want to make any more adjustments as long as it's working. So I'm a little behind you, but I don't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, so good. So, um, I lost my train of thought. I think the thing what I was going to say is that like not everyone has the capacity to do some of these more intellectually challenging jobs, and that's a problem. But in the aggregate, there is the economy doesn't show that. Just from 2010 up till COVID hit, the number of jobs in the United States alone was growing. And you know what else was growing? Automation. So the the numbers just
Yeah,
don't
I mean,
seem to
I
line
will
up
say
with
that
the.
that's not. Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. It's not that. It's just that it seems that like with certain automation, like jobs are quite literally being replaced, and some of the jobs that are popping up because of it, or jobs that are changing or evolving because of this, doesn't really. It's not applicable for everyone. So like people that have,
Yeah,
I'll just say like general laborers who have been replaced by automation haven't or or already maybe later in life, they don't get the option to come in and say, okay, I'm just going to go back and get a new degree for this job that I have, or for this job that I don't have, that was created by this program that I had no idea was coming, and it basically took my job from me. It's a little late in life for some of these people to go back and get a degree specifically in something like cybersecurity, when maybe their whole life they've been doing something like, you know, mechanics or whatnot, that has just been working by hand, the quote unquote blue collar, if you will.
yeah, and so I mean, I'm not trying to say that there's not going to be anyone that's going to suffer as a result of automation. I mean, that's just a result of an evolving economy. Just like when our economy went from hold on. Hold on, Mom. So I mean, just like when our economy went from more agricultural based to industrial based. I mean, so there were people who lost out, because they couldn't, you know, maybe they weren't suited for factory work. And that's the same thing that's happening now when we're moving from industrial based economy to more technologically based economy. So yes, there's going to be people losing out, but there overall the economy is going to benefit. Man, that
Yeah,
delay
I
is
mean,
killing
so
me.
yeah, yes and no, because it seems that more jobs are being replaced by automation than are being created by them, and it seems that the necessary, like some of the jobs that are what's the word I want to use? I'll just call them blue collar jobs, even though I don't mean it in a derogatory way. The derogatory job, the blue collar jobs, are being replaced at a more rapid rate than people can get education or get special training or get, this other necessity to get additional jobs or jobs that are being replaced by automation. So I'm not saying it's not also the job market isn't available or that people can't get a job. It's just that it's harder to replace.
You know what though? See, and this is where the capitalism steps in, because there's a bunch of different schools and boot camps that will teach you these jobs, like a coding boot camp. I've seen several of them, and the boot camp is free up front, and you don't pay until you land your first job, and it's like 10% of your first year's salary. So the ability is there, and and to like I was saying, like I think you said that it's destroying jobs faster than it's creating them. That's not what the numbers are saying. Like I was saying, like the number of jobs in the United States was growing up until COVID hit. That was despite automation increasing.
So that's not really true. The jobs are changing. The jobs aren't growing.
I'm talking about the number of jobs in the United States. There were number of positions that somebody could fill. They were filling up. That's just the economical.
Yeah, but like when you look at those numbers, the jobs
Department of Bureau of Labor Statistics.
Like jobs like consequently like things that need something like cybersecurity experts or people with special training or specialized engineering degrees versus jobs that are done by manual labor or jobs that are being replaced by automation. Those jobs aren't in and of themselves are being filled by automation, and then they're being created in other aspects, but the total ratio hasn't really increased all that much, if at all.
I mean, I would say just look at Bureau of Labor Statistics. Look at it from just after when we ended the housing market crash, that financial crash that happened from then, like in late 2010, up until about COVID. I mean, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, it just points it out. I mean, there's no denying the number of jobs was definitely growing. And another thing, like you couldn't. It's not even. I don't even see how it would even be possible for automation to destroy jobs faster than they create them. For instance, like let's say there's people that put up cans of food in my grocery store, and then I buy a machine that's able to put up the cans and replace those jobs, right? First, I need to have someone that can run this machine, that can create the software for it and debug it and all that type of stuff. That job has to happen before it can go out into the market and actually take someone else's job. That has to happen prior. There's just no way that in most cases where automation could destroy a job before to create one.
Yeah, so you're correct in an essence, but you have to keep in mind that machines can do things infinitely faster and automation can do things infinitely faster than humans can. So when something like an automation process starts, you may have a bunch of people working to create this machine that paint fences or stack cans or whatever, and once that's in place, everyone that would have potentially stacked cans for these locations now no longer is necessary.
So you mean like
you're creating jobs by making machines to replace these people, and even if you were, again, that's the job market evolving, but the machines are going to be able to do things much more efficiently and effectively than humans can, and they're going to replace all of them in the future.
Not all. I mean, all of them. There's so I looked. I told you how there was.
I'm using. Obviously, that's a hyperbole, but it's quite literally replacing people along the way.
Yeah. You know what? Before we go too down into this rabbit hole, because we're getting dangerously close to arguing about economics, and we were supposed to be talking about artificial intelligence. I think we're getting a little off topic.
I agree.
You agree?
Yeah. I'm gonna.
I got a question for you though.
Some delay down, or I'm gonna try.
Okay.
Do me.
You want me to talk in the meantime?
Answer the phone.
All right.
No, just answer your actual phone.
Yeah, I did.
Okay, now talk for a second. I'm gonna mute myself and I'm gonna put my headphones in, or a headphone in for my phone, and it should cut down the delay.
Okay, how long are you gonna be? Because in the meantime, I can tell a joke.
Just like 30 seconds.
All right. All right. So I was gonna tell a joke, but I don't think we have. 30 seconds is definitely not a long enough time for me to tell this joke. So I'll wait. But I'm just gonna have just dead silence either. But I got a few army buddies listening. So want to say I appreciate y'all tuning in. Yes, I can. Perfect.
Okay, cool. And I've cut down the delay altogether, I think.
Perfect.
And now you didn't talk at all, so now I have no idea.
Yeah. You can't hear me? You can't hear me at all? Yo, you can't hear me?
Stay on the phone so I can hear you on both microphones.
Oh! Oh, that's what you were saying.
Yeah, you hung up and it cleared it. So I'm going to mute my phone, but you should be able to hear me through the Discord, and you can still hear me in the headphones. Just keep your phone close by so I can hear you through that mic. It should cut down all delay.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, so listen.
Perfect.
Yeah, you can put the phone down away so you don't hear on the phone, but you can hear with your headphones through Discord.
Yeah. So I had a question about AI jobs. Do you? So obviously, we agree that despite disagreeing on the rate that AI is taking jobs.
Sure.
Do you think there are jobs that AI shouldn't take?
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely jobs that I would consider that the AI probably shouldn't take.
Like what?
So for one, like life-saving emergency doctors and or triage.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think it's going to literally come down to how they're programmed, to how they decide how to treat patients, and depending on who's programming it and what their priorities are, they may dismiss people altogether out of hand. So
yeah, but I think AI could at least be helpful in prioritize I don't know why I'm having such a
prioritization. Yeah, I get you.
Yes, exactly.
The option is there. I'm not saying it's not an option. I'm just saying it seems like a very bad thing. So right now, there's some pretty basic things that, especially in like emergency triage, that hospitals typically follow. But there are obviously other signs that humans that have experienced this hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times, and the reason they're transferred to like ER units and emergency response and other stuff like that. There's a reason they've been put in those positions, because they see signs that typical people that don't work in those positions may miss. And they're not things that you typically program, and they're not things that always come up, and they're not things that you would necessarily just know off the bat either. So,
but they could be. Like you could, like for instance, you could be. I'm not sure how in the how it works on the civilian side. I know in the military, right, when someone is, let's say they're getting care like on the battlefield, right? Let's say there's two soldiers down. One has a very serious injury. Another has a fatal injury.
Okay.
Right? They're both still alive, but and one it's fatal. No, he doesn't have a chance. Which one do you treat first?
Well, I mean, so a fatal injury means that they're undoubtedly going to die, right? So that means like a fatal injury means they're instant from death. So you treat the one that is likelier to
the one that
survive, right?
Cool. Let's say now it's not even fatal. Like, it's not even necessarily fatal. Oh, but one has a slight higher chance of surviving over the other. Which one would you fit?
I mean,
I mean, which
it would depend on the actual scenario and the situation. But like, if I knew, like, if for somehow I could determine that one had like a 55% chance of survival and one had a 60% chance of survival, statistically, I would choose the one with 60% chance of survival.
Yeah, that's army doctrine actually, and that's exactly what I think an AI could do.
Except
now.
That's not how civilians do it, because I've talked to a few nursing friends of mine, and in civilian
Well, yeah,
there's two things.
I had a caveat.
Yeah, so in the civilian world, there's typically two things that you look out for when considering triage, and one is heart rate, and the other is breathing rate. So if your heart rate is stable and your breathing rate is stable, it doesn't matter what kind of wound you may have, you're probably not getting seen before someone who has one or both of those things being in jeopardy. So if you come in and you're not breathing, you're likely to be seen, or if you come in and your heart rate's very sporadic, you're more likely to be seen than someone who comes in and they're missing a finger who's bleeding all over the place if your heartbeat and your breathing rate are fine.
So to me, so what you just described there doesn't seem complicated at all. Like that's a basic formula that could be programmed into AI now.
Potentially, but the problem comes in when there's those odd cases that I was telling you about that typically only very trained people are likely to pick up on.
Okay. What about like presiding over a court case?
Yeah, I mean, that comes into a pretty gray area, but statistically, let's just say, I mean, there are quite literally encyclopedias of law. The only issue I would have with them being judge per se is, I mean, I wouldn't have them be jury, but potentially judge.
So what about this? Not even just presiding. What about actually writing out legal opinions?
Well, I mean, so given that legal precedence has been set on a lot of things, it would be probably okay in most cases. I know that seems a little strange, but I bet you specifically in like non-criminal cases, I bet you in like most civil cases or in most like traffic court, it would be completely fine, because chances are there's a database of all the like things that have ever happened, and this AI could potentially sort through them all in a matter of seconds and determine a statistical average course of action, whether that be writing a ticket or, you know, suspending a license, and they would just look at driving history of similar people in similar situations and essentially analyze and determine a statistical average of things that have happened over the past amount of time of driving law. And then write out a specific, statistical average as a response to the person in front of them.
Yeah. So my issue with that is writing case law. It's not always that clear cut.
No,
like a lot of times there.
Well, and it's very rare that precedents get set on a case these days.
No, I mean, not at lower levels. No, I mean Supreme Court. I mean, it kind of happens all the time. This is what I was going to
saying. Like when
jump
it comes
into
to stuff like traffic court and maybe civil issues. So,
well, yeah. I mean,
these are not going to the Supreme Court most of the time.
Yeah, well, I mean, so a basic adjudication opinion from like a traffic ticket or something like that. Sure.
Yeah.
Would you be okay with let's we went back in time. We took some advanced AI back to 1953 during Brown versus Board of Education. Mm-hmm. This is the case that eliminated Jim Crow.
Right.
Would you be confident in an AI's ability to write the legal opinion for that?
Well, so that depends on how sophisticated the AI is, because if it's a genuine AI where it's artificial intelligence and it's actually learning and it has some sort of emotional understanding, which is not, that would be considered what most people say like a second level of intelligence, right? It's emotional understanding.
Yeah.
Then perhaps because it would recognize that people are people and it doesn't matter what race those people are. Like, if I'm applying this law to this person and I'm applying this law to this person because they're of a different skin tone, that doesn't make any sense. Like, and that would be a logical contradiction for the AI.
Maybe. Maybe.
But if it's strictly dependent upon programming, then no. Because the people that programmed it could very well be racist.
Well, yeah. So, software engineers put biases into code. I mean, they can't help it.
Right.
I mean, it's just
yeah.
But I mean, I'm not confident that an AI wouldn't, even in advanced form, would necessarily come to the same opinion that we would hold today. So, like, because what if it's looking? What if it doesn't have the same values? And that was one of the key aspects that helped them come to that conclusion. Because what if it said this, that it looked at they looked at performance of blacks in certain areas and whites in certain areas and said, oh yes, it is fine based off of these logical inferences that it made.
Yeah, but I mean, this is at a Supreme Court level, so this is happening across
the
nation. You shouldn't take things into consideration at a national or federal level that are specific to a specific area. So, I mean, obviously, there are people on both sides of the street here that there's blacks and whites living in very, very poor neighborhoods and therefore more likely to commit more crimes. There are also blacks and whites living in very high-end neighborhoods and less likely to commit more crime. But they're still people, they're still humans, and at the federal level, living in the United States at least, are equal, at least on the grounds of both being humans, both having the same rights. You shouldn't take into consideration, oh, well, because there's this white crack addict that lives in this specific area, or there's this, black thief that lives over here. Like, you can't take it and make a federal law based off of a single instance of something happening somewhere else. That would be ludicrous.
So the point that I want to get to is that, so your reasoning, like, I don't disagree with it, but like you're intellectualizing from your values, like you're a humanist, right? And so you value the well-being of people. And what I'm saying is the AI may not necessarily have those values and look at it from a different view. Maybe the AI's view isn't as empathic as yours would be. It isn't. It's just its values are different. It's not looking out to say, "Hey, what is best for humankind?" No. What if it's instead it's looking at what's going to help humankind progress in some in one way or another.
So there's two things that we're doing here, and I think we could potentially springboard this into something else. And one, I want to address this real quick YouTube comment. I have no idea what VUN rent is. It may just be a bot, whatever. Just wanted to throw that out there. We do read literally every comment. I do appreciate the people that have commented and said the Echo and the Army Buddy checking in. I'm sure that's with Geo.
Yeah, I know who that is.
With all that in mind, we do read literally every comment. I appreciate you chatting. It's very helpful. It helps promote the channel. But where you're going,
you have a question. I'm sorry. Yeah. I was going to say, if you have a question, go ahead. Feel free to put it in chat or call in.
Yeah, or comment, and feel free to call in as well. With that in mind, though, I think where you're going with this, or what you're doing here, at least in my 2 cents worth of information, is that essentially we're going down into the idea of rights and or threats for AI. So
yeah,
what I say by that is obviously where I get into sentience, where I say a threat ? The reason I put a question mark behind that is because if AI were to become sentient, then is it possible that they would be a threat? And that would involve having different values from humanist and or humans.
Yeah, I mean, so it's very difficult to imagine because AI, like when you think about it, you're like, oh, it's just code, right? It so it's not, there's no life in it or something, like, or like there's no soul or something, like if you're religious or whatever, right? But I think that could be an argument that primitive. I mean, can about humans, you could say, oh, we're just chemistry or something like that, right? For me, once something becomes sentient, once it has the ability to suffer, that's when it starts to envelop moral obligations. Like at maybe very basic ones, but at least for example, let's say we have a sentient AI. Would you think it's moral for me to torture it?
So, I mean, if you define sentience at the basic level of the ability to feel pain and or suffering, then no, because obviously you shouldn't intentionally torture anything for any reason. Hi there, little girl.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, at a fundamental level, you shouldn't threaten things that have feelings or are capable of suffering. So, at the very basic level, no. However, that also means assuming rights for AI. Because
Yeah.
if you assume that it has no rights, then it doesn't matter whether you torture it or not. And what if its definition of torture is different than something like humanism? So what if your existence in and of itself is torture to AI somehow? Like, now what? Now you have literally a clashing existence.
Yeah, I mean, in that sense, I'm going to invoke my right to life.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
see, but that's the issue. Like, we don't know. Like, I mean, like we talk about like having different, moral guidelines or different standards or different, like points of view on this kind of thing. Like, what if human existence in and of itself, as far as the AI is concerned, is indeed, morally against AI's beliefs? So, like, human existence, which is, taking and destroying things on our planet to use however we want. What if the AI determines that that is not a good thing and decides humans are in and of itself a virus or a plague or something that needs to be eradicated? Now, you and you and the AI have fundamentally different existences.
Yeah, I mean, like in that instance, like I'll say that the AI is wrong, because now we're not even talking about the same thing anymore. Like I would have, like, if the AI doesn't care about human well being, or the well being of sentient creatures, then I don't care about its opinion, and that's the same position that I would hold for any person that said that had that view, or someone that say like their religious beliefs have that view. I mean, there's a lot of people who say um, their morals are dictated by what a god thinks, or what or any sort of book says, and they don't care as much about human well being, right? So, like, in that sense, I would say, well, we're using the same word, but we're not describing the same thing.
Right.
Like, because for
perhaps
me,
you should come up with a different term, because by using a specific term, you're coming up with different definitions.
Yeah, well, I mean, and I don't care as much about terms, but long as when I say something, I say something's immoral. Like, I mean, it is doing harm to someone, like unjustifiably so.
Gotcha.
Right. So, yeah, and that's what I mean when I say immoral. If an AI does not have that same value, then I guess me and that AI are in irreconcilable conflict.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I would hope it seems that the more we learn, like I was saying last week, we were talking about the aliens, right? Like the more we learn, it seems that our morals improve. And I will hope, if artificial intelligence, as this AI would progress, its morals would improve as well. Like, and they would align more so like ours. Like, I would have expected to be even, to value life even more so than what most humans value it,
Yeah, fair.
just because it could advance faster.
Yeah, fair enough. So, as far as rights and or a threat, obviously the examples given EG here, which is, not technically what EG stands for, but close enough. Exemplis gratius. Ultron and Vision, so they're kind of two sides of the coin here, both in the MCU. If you're aware of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and or the Marvel Universe, they're not specific to the Cinematic Universe, but Ultron being the initial creation of like Hank Pym, aka Ant-Man, and Vision being Ultron's creation, actually, originally. But for the sake of argument, let's just say both of them were created by a human. If something along the lines of like Ultron or Vision were to come, to be produced in actuality, do you think it should get similar, not necessarily the same, but similar rights to humans?
I'd say so. If Vision was real, he walked into my house, I don't think I could torture him. I don't think that would be moral. Even though you could say, oh, at his base, he's just a machine. I was saying dismissive argument like that can easily be used for organic life. We're just flesh and bones, right? So
yeah, we're just a collection of cells. We're not anything beyond that.
Exactly. Unless you want to try to appeal to we have spirits or something like that. In that case, I don't see how you could disprove that Vision doesn't have one as well. So any argument you could use to dismiss its rights could equally be applied to mine. And you saw the you're familiar with the comics. Vision, he shows everything you would expect from someone who has the ability to suffer. Probably because of his intelligence, probably even more so.
Yeah, that's not typically what you see in humans. So typically and not always, but typically you notice, and I don't even care for the terms, but I'll use them for the sake of making the point, that when you typically see something like a really, really high IQ or intelligence quotient, you typically see a lower EQ among those same people. And by that you mean emotional quotient. So typically the higher the IQ, the lower the emotional quotient. So the smarter you are, the less emotional you become because you're relying more on logic. And that's not always the case, but in cases of humans, at least as far as ones we've studied and psychologically speaking, that typically seems to be the trend. So the higher the IQ you have, typically tend to be especially in instances of geniuses, savants, etc., they typically have less emotional range than someone that's just average across the board.
I'm not that familiar with it. It sounds like they'd be more empathic, but you're saying the more intelligent they become, the less emotional they are.
Yeah, so it's called the high IQ, low EQ problem, and literally that's the thing that typically people that are extremely high IQ typically have a lower EQ, and it's not necessarily always in juxtaposition, but
yeah.
A lot of times when you have like I said, savants or people that are certifiable geniuses, typically they have a harder time emotionally connecting with people than people that aren't geniuses.
Okay, so I get maybe what you're describing as a emotional intelligence is not the same thing that I'm thinking of, but emotion can be very logical. And
clarify that statement for me.
Okay, sure. So for instance, I get angry because somebody punches me in the face. Why? Because I'm evolved from creatures who care about their well-being. So getting angry is a very logical response. As a matter of fact, it's probably necessary for my survival, because it'll help me do things.
I would say that's almost more of an instinctual response, because it's not something that you logically thought about in any way, shape, or form. You literally got mad almost instantaneously. That is your brain producing chemicals to help in your defense system. That wasn't a logically well thought out plan that you came up with. And by no means did you follow logic to get there.
Surely, sure I did. I mean, maybe it was a really quick process. I don't see why the logic part is
let's
isolated
make it a little
from
personal, because I literally heard your daughter screaming in the background earlier, and I know you have one.
Yeah.
So let's take her as an example, and let's say her versus another child, and there's the opportunity to save one or the other. Do you choose your own daughter?
Well, yeah, probably.
Yeah, there's nothing logical about that, though.
Well,
like,
so
their sole existence is to produce, is to help the human species move forward and progress.
Well, so there's nothing. No, the emotional attachment could be logically explained.
I'm not saying the emotional attachment couldn't be logically explained, because we understand that humans have emotions, but I'm saying logically, if there's a child that belongs to you that your genetic makeup helped make, and then there's a child that your genetic makeup did not help make, and you have the opportunity to save one or the other, and your chances are equally good of saving either, then there's no real logical reason, strictly speaking, with exception of your emotional attachment, to save your own child.
Well, now you're talking about value. So that can be logically explained as well. Why someone would value their own child. I mean, that can be explained through like evolution. So for me, here's the problem that I'm having. So emotions, they come from the brain. The brain is following a pattern based off of physics. That it's a logical sequence of events that's happening one from another, right? I mean, because it's doing that is very logical.
Yeah, but I mean that's like saying anything that happens in your brain is logical because it happened in an orderly fashion, or that that's a sequential event.
Well, that's literally the point that I'm trying to make.
I mean, by that, if you're trying to say anything is logical.
Well, sure. I mean, long as it's following the orders of physics. But if you're talking about value, it sounds like when you were asking me if I would choose my daughter over a girl that I didn't know.
That as a really strong personal example, but you could literally say anything.
The problem is
because it happens in your brain is logical.
But the problem is right then you're talking about value. So that there's no objective reason for value. So as far as some logical basis for it, of course there's not going to be one. That doesn't mean that it can't be logically explained. If you're looking for a logical basis for value, of course there's just not going to be one.
Yeah, but
you were saying.
Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I'll cut you off.
I was literally just saying, like, at a pure logistical standpoint, there genuinely isn't one, but you can apply emotional status and emotional attachment to things and then justify that with logic. But in and of itself, that emotion is not logical. It is emotion. That is quite literally the opposite.
It's not. The opposite of logic is not emotion.
I mean, to an extent.
Not at all.
To the extent what we're talking, it very much so is. Because
not to the extent that I'm talking. It's not an impulse. I mean, it's a logical. So, like, emotions just aren't always impulsive. I mean, it's just like, I mean, I can. If someone would punch me in the face, like, I know, like, I'm going to get angry. I may not even immediately get angry because I may not realize what happened. right? Because maybe they hit me really hard and I'm just confused. And then bam, oh, I found out what happened. Now okay. Now I'm angry. Hey, that's totally emotional. Now I find out who actually hit me. Now I can direct that. I mean, it sounds like you're describing, like, you're putting emotion on one side and logic on the other, like, and as if they're like opposites, and I don't see it that way. To me, like, logic is a explanation of logic is what help you explains things. Is that it's not what gives value. And also, I think we're all kind of off topic because first we were talking about intelligence, and then we got on logic.
Yeah, I mean, I'm
And
all for
intelligence isn't
we can
logic.
discuss logical issues later. Let's get back to topic, especially since we've had audio issues at the beginning.
Yeah.
So let's take on because I think it can be rather quick if we need it to be. And obviously,
Okay. Yeah. Probably.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we're kind of running over time.
Yeah.
My daughter's getting
so.
agitated.
If you want to look into like real examples of potential like Ultron / Visions in the future, and we're a long ways from that. Just being perfectly frank and upfront with that, I highly recommend looking into something like Sophia the robot. You can just Google that, or Amika, or GPT-3, which is an AI program. It is not a physical machine. Well, it is a physical machine. It just doesn't. It's not humanoid. It doesn't look at all like humans, but it is really fascinating to watch people communicate back and forth with some of these devices, and sometimes comically so, like when Sophia said she wanted to destroy all humans. So with that in mind, I think we should just go ahead and jump straight into the last part of this, which is transhumanism, because I think in all the other cases we could talk about, like, in law enforcement and military and applications in which they can be used, and we kind of talked about that a little bit in jobs, but let's kind of transition into transhumanism, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, I'm down.
So, real quick, go ahead and explain your concept of transhumanism.
My understanding of transhumanism is that humans' destiny is to blend with technology to the point where humanity and technology becomes indistinguishable.
Yeah, I 100% agree with the concept there. I think we're almost in 100% agreement on pretty much this whole concept and idea, at least. And I don't know how you feel about the idea of transhumanism, but I know what we both perceive as transhumanism. So defining it, I think we're on the same page. What do you think of the possibility of transhumanism? And by that, I mean basically integrating yourself with advanced electronics and/or robotics.
I'm not sure if it can be done. I don't know why it couldn't, because at the base level, the brain is just a computer. But I'm fine with that. I mean, it's not like I'm not a transhumanist, but it is, and I definitely don't necessarily think it's our destiny. But to me, I mean, I think it could be a good thing, right? Like, you could intentionally get rid of diseases. People could go on to live for a really long time, just be around. Just think about all the things that you could, the more things that you could learn, and that's like one of my loves of life, just being able to learn things. But unfortunately, I'm limited by my body. It's not going to be able to go on forever. I'll have probably at most about 50, 60 more years to learn things before I die, and all of that knowledge is gone. So
yeah, I mean, and so
I'm okay with it.
Feel about the idea of like potentially uploading your brain to something like the cloud and then having just a completely artificial you, if you will.
I'd do it, but like I guess a lot of people would question: is it a copy of me or is it me? If it's just a copy of me, then I go on to die and my experiences end. However, there's something that is indistinguishable from me that goes on living. I'm not going to care about that. But if my experience is able to transition from this body to a machine, I wouldn't mind that.
Yeah, I mean,
I mean,
definitely an interesting thought experiment, because obviously there's the idea of like, is it still you? There's I forget where the ship, if you know what I'm talking about, the Greek ship.
oh, Theseus ship,
Yeah, the
Theseus
ship
ship.
of Theseus. Like that's
Yeah.
literally like one of the fundamental philosophical issues. Like, at what point in time is it no longer the ship of Theseus?
Mm-hmm.
So,
I got an answer for that. Problem, but we can talk about it another time.
yeah, but I mean, like, obviously the idea, I think, is concerning to a lot of people, and this is something that we wanted to address here real quick, is just that, I don't think many people have to worry about your job being replaced, but B, if for some reason sentience does happen, you might have to worry about a threat or uprising, assuming that the AI has a different set of values than humans. And then lastly, the idea of transhumanism isn't something that should freak you out or scare you, but something that should intrigue you, especially if you have a desire for a long life. So if that's the situation on all counts, then by all means continue with the idea of, transhumanism. But if that's not the case, then perhaps, consider just not doing it at all. But that's completely up to you.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it'll have some religious implications for it as well. Like, hey, if you stay in a machine, do you go on to whatever supernatural place that your beliefs align with, like heaven, hell, or purgatory, or whatever?
Yeah. And
that's
a
not
whole
something.
different animal, but yeah.
Yeah, it is. We could do another episode just on that.
Yeah, we could. But with that in mind, was there anything you wanted to add before we jump off? I know we're a little over on time. We typically have to go, and we apologize for the audio issues at the beginning. I think we got them finally settled, at least working until I can reset all of this. But I think we cut out the delay altogether. And was there anything you wanted to add before we take off?
No, I'm good. Definitely tune in next week.
Man, next week, I'm telling you guys, we cannot hype this enough, and we cannot be serious enough. If you watch this or watch part of this, or if you're interested in it, any part of it, if you like a good controversy, next week is specifically for you. It is going to be undoubtedly the most controversial topic we've taken on, and we believe we're at the forefront of this concept and idea, and we'd like you guys to join the journey with us and give your 2 cents and let your voice be heard. So if you didn't watch all of this one and you have that knack of wanting to get in an argument or getting a good discussion with a couple guys, please tune in next week. I don't want to spoil the topic yet, but I can say that it's going to be controversial. I already have talked to a few people about a similar concept, and I've already gotten some pushback and feedback and like a little pullback, if you will, on how they feel about certain things that we're going to be talking about. So definitely tune in next week. Hopefully we'll definitely get the audio issues fixed by then. We had it working, and then there was that echo, and I figured out why, but I would literally have to reset the program to fix it at this point. So we just kind of found a workaround. So we appreciate you dealing with us through that. Anything you wanted to add?
No, I'm good. That was it.
All right. Thank you all for watching. We are Now That's Debatable. Please check us out next week and share it with everyone that you know.